So I have reset, and of course now I have no one watching. So hopefully some of you will come back again. I gotta find it here now. All right, looks like it's loading up here. And yep, I've got one person, me watching me. Now it's kind of like normal when I'm working here in the shop and talking to myself. All right, Frank and Joe, I appreciate you guys taking the jump to get over here. If this one doesn't work, I guess we'll try another day. Yeah, you hear me talking to myself, Freddie. Freddie, that's not uncommon. My wife will walk in sometimes when I'm working in the shop and I'm talking, and she's like, "You recorded?" I'm like, "Nope, just talking to myself." Anyway, I see someone says they need help with their edge bevelers. I'm not sure. My Odin beveler is not doing the job. So let's talk about that for just a second. Maybe we'll get some people join in. So I started off with a Tandy edge beveler. And actually, I just ended up buying one here just the other day that I'm going to abuse and use for a different purpose. But I started off with an inexpensive edge beveler set. I mean, why not, right? Because you're starting out and you're not sure if you're going to like doing it. At the time, I had a belt to make. So, you know, this belt's getting expensive. I'm buying tools to make one belt. So I purchased an edge beveler from Tandy, and it worked. Well, how am I supposed to know how it works, right? How do you compare it to anything else when you've not used any other tool? So I used it. I was a little frustrated with it, and I'll get where I'm going with it. But so I bought another set that had larger and smaller sizes because I thought maybe the problem was that the one I bought wasn't meant to cut a radius that I wanted. So I bought a set, interchangeable tips. I used those for about a year, and my edges were okay, but they weren't great. So when I was in Prescott, I ended up buying the set of runs. So where I'm going with that is when I was in Florida not long, brother retired, and he's dabbling with getting into leathercraft a little bit, and that's where I ended up giving him my rotary punch and some of these other things. He had my old Tandy set. Yeah, I set my brother up good. I gave him the crappy edge bevelers, or what I thought was not any good. So when I was down there, I said, I want to sharpen those, because I felt like after I learned how to sharpen the Ron's tools that I could, and I did. I modified two of them. I got them, they were a flat cut. I modified them by sharpening them into a rounded cut. So I guess what I would say, I think the majority of the time, if we're having problems with our edge work and we're not getting a nice clean bevel, I'm going to go back to, are we sharpening them correctly? And occasionally I'll have a little bit of a problem with the Rons, because what I've noticed is that when you sharpen those, you guys have probably seen me do it before, but I put a steel rod on the surface, and I asked Ron, how do you know which steel rod is the right size for an edge beveler? And he said it should be 1.5 times the width of your radius. So if you have a 1/8 radius, then you need a 3/16 steel rod. But I've noticed occasionally when I'm doing it, it's like this one's seems to be cutting differently, and I'll actually turn around and I'll actually run it backwards. And what I think ends up happening is I get out of alignment with what I'm sharpening on. So instead of sharpening here and keeping it nice and straight, maybe when I'm pulling it, I'm twisted a little bit. So that changes the geometry there a little bit. So I guess I would say that if you're having issues with your Odin beveler, I'd go back and look at how you're sharpening it to see if there's anything there. And I see Joe says that he doesn't, I'm not going to use that. He's not proficient at sharpening. So there's only one way to get better at leathercraft, and that's to make projects and just keep repeating. Maybe get into I've told people that if you like belts, then I would just make belt after belt after belt until you get to where you have the product coming out the way you want it. Sharpening's the same way. You just have to dedicate time to doing it. And I think the majority of the time people do things that end up hurting themselves, such as if you're stropping a skiving knife, we tend to not even realize it, but we like roll a little bit at the end. You know, you pull like that, and and not, I'm exaggerating, but you roll that, and then you've changed that geometry. So on the end, it'd be like having a bowed up area like here, and now I'm trying to push that down through there and cut it when it needs to be straight like that when I'm cutting it. So I think, like anything else, sharpening knives and tools is a skill set that has to be developed. I've got, I recorded video, I don't know if I'll publish it or not, but I had the kitchen knives out here that I bought in 1984. Yes, I know when, I can tell you where, but they always cut okay. And it's probably been 2 years since I sharpened them, and I brought them out, and I went through sharpened them all the way down to strop, and you can shave with every one of them now. It's a little scary to have that in the kitchen. I warned the HR department to be careful with them because they're sharp. So I would just tell you that if you're having problems with it cutting, the first place I would look at is the sharpening and stropping of that tool. I think that's, like I said, once I was down there and I pulled all those out and I resharpened them, and I used actually some copper wire that was the right thickness, sandpaper over that, and I created the correct geometry on each one of those, and they cut as well as I think as the Rons. The one thing is, I'm sure they're not as good as steel as this, so they won't hold an edge as well. So you find yourself cutting like one belt and then having to go back and re-strop, which would not be unusual for something that doesn't cut very well. So I think we've beat that around the horn enough. Yeah, I thought I bought, I was looking at different things to buy. So I was, a video a couple times ago, some of you guys were more concerned for my safety than I appeared to be when I was doing it. But when I was taking apart that belt, that was, let's see, that 2 Saturdays ago, I think it was. And I was using the knife in what some would say was an unsafe manner, and I was talking about getting a stitch ripper, and I actually had one of my viewer friends, you know, say, you know, hey, tell me where to get one. I'll buy it and send it to you. I don't want to see you get hurt, you know. And Ron's makes one. I hate to sound tight. I guess I at times it probably doesn't look like I work within a budget, but it's like I just don't remove stitches that often. I don't do that much repair work, and I couldn't bring myself to spend the $120 to buy Ron's stitch cutter, and his is a push cutter. And so I got thinking, I'm going to make one out of this. I bought this inexpensive French skiver from Tandy, and I'm going to modify this to make it do what I want to do. And I've seen people use like skivers, push it through there to cut the threads. So I'm going to modify this a little bit, make it thinner down in there, and I think this will work, I think, really well for that purpose. Yeah, so I think I gather what Joe is saying here. I'm trying to just read it quickly here without just having dead air. I think really if you want to focus in on certain items, you know, you want to become proficient at belts or you want to become proficient at wallets, I think you can really do that with really just a few select tools. And it's a little bit of, getting in a little bit at a time. You're able to moderate how much money you spend on there, because there was tools I bought, I think I've said it before, in my very first trip into Tandy buying tools that I've yet to use. And a couple of them, I didn't like how they worked. It could be that I'm using them wrong as well. But I've got one of those adjustable creasers, and when I press to try to put a crease mark, it tends to like want to vary, like I'm bending the metal, and it's like this thing's frustrating. So it's in the bottom of the toolbox over here, and I don't use it. But I tell you that having a quality tool just makes it that much more fun. And if you're in it for a hobby, and I get it, entry level is different for everybody in that area, the better tool just makes the hobby fun. And if the hobby's not fun, I guarantee you're not going to do it. You know, you're going to get frustrated. I see people at times, like I make wallets and I've made purses, and I'm intimidated about making a belt, and I look at it going, I make belts and I'm intimidated at times about making a bag or a purse. So I think it's really just about getting into it, breaking the ice, working on it, and being comfortable with the whole process there. Yeah, I agree. Some cut-proof or cut-resistant gloves would be a good investment. And now Michael says it's not syncing with sound. I hope that's on your end there, Mr. Scott. I've already killed one live stream here. So, and I tell you what, one reason why I decided to do the live stream today. So I'm going to change topics here just a little bit there, and I'll answer questions. So put questions in there, and I'll jump in there and do that. But one of my older brothers came to town to visit me, and he's here for a week, and we've been doing some sightseeing. And he's a little bit older than me, a very good physical shape, and he likes sports. And I never did get into sports a whole lot, but eons ago now, 32 years ago, we lived about an hour apart, and we'd meet up and throw the ball back and forth, or we'd get on a baseball diamond and I'd hit balls out to the field, and he'd catch them and throw them in, then we'd swap around and do that. And he got here and he wanted to know if I had my glove, and I'm like, it's right over there on the bench. I was kind of hoping you'd ask. And I'm not going to make a baseball glove. But I got thinking about how different things, such as, I don't know if you saw my video yesterday on that knife. That's actually his knife. And my father purchased that, our father purchased that, I think in 1952 in Florida, not long after he came back from World War II. And I wonder if when he bought it, they were down there in Florida from Indiana to, get away from the weather and enjoy things a little bit, and he ends up buying that. And I wonder if it's one of those things that, he bought because it reminded him of another time. My guess is that when he bought that knife, I'll give you a sneak peek at it. I've got the handle finished on it now. So yesterday, if you watched the video, I didn't have the handle finished yet, and I've been working on editing, trying to get it down something reasonable. And I know I had one of my viewers ask me, and I do this all the time, you got to keep things away from me. I'm like, I'm not going to show that knife. I'm not going to show that knife. But there's the handle I ended up putting on it. And I really would have probably rather put a wood handle on it there. I couldn't find any wood scales that I liked. And I've actually, in the summer shop, I've actually got some lumber that my father and I harvested from the woods on our property and took to a sawmill in southern Indiana, had milled up. That would be kind of a cool story on there. But I didn't go with wood because I figured I would probably, I've never put scales on a handle before, and I was afraid that I would end up just cracking the wood several times trying to get it done, because I would be somewhat abusing the scales to get them put on there. So this is Markita, and it's in black and gray. And so when I'm like, what color sheath should I go with? I think you guys would probably agree that black would probably look good, or maybe you could do gray if I wanted. I've thought about doing a tooled black with a gray antique on it. But I tell you, if you didn't see the video on this, go see the video. And it's long. It's another hour-long video. Watch the first 10 minutes if you don't watch the rest of it, and then you can just come to this and see this. But the condition that the knife was in was it was really in bad shape, and I think it came out really nice. So now I need to move on to a sheath, and so I'm torn. Maybe in the comments here, let me know what you think. Should it be black, black with some gray antiquing in there, or a natural color with tooling, and then a black antique in it. So I think it just screams that it should be a black one. But anyway, I'll put that down. But yeah, I think the knife just came out really beautiful. So where I was talking about it is, my father bought this in Florida on a trip down there. And I guarantee you that when he was growing up during the Depression, and then, he grew up on a farm in Indiana with Grandpa was more frugal than most, I'll just say that. And probably when he went to the general store, he wanted a knife. And so when he got an opportunity to buy a knife, he bought a knife. And my wife's grandfather, when he passed away some years back, he had leather gloves everywhere, glove boxes, center console, half a dozen pairs on the workbench. And Grandma, after he passed away, is like, "What's the deal with these gloves?" And it's like, I guarantee you, he grew up in early Depression. He walked out of Oklahoma to Arizona during the Dust Bowl. And I guarantee you, he always wanted a pair of leather gloves. And I know that because I grew up always wishing I could have leather gloves. And we got the brown jersey gloves in Indiana when it's negative 22. They don't do a whole lot for protection. So I went to oil this. I oiled it like one time when I bought this. And I bought this somewhere around, I'm going to say 1990. I bought this glove, and it's not been oiled much. And it just really made me think about that we have things around us. I think that's one reason why I like taking old tools and working with old tools, is we have things that trigger our memories. And I think there's times when maybe our better half's like, "What is the deal with you and old tools, or with you and flashlights, or leather, or whatever it may be?" And I think when we see these things, and now we can afford to buy them, then it becomes a way to, maybe go back and almost relive that point where you're, throwing the ball around with your dad, or you're, shopping with him, or you can remember going to, maybe a Western sporting goods store when you visited out west in Oklahoma or something like that. So anyway, let's see what we got here. Black sheath, black on black. Let the handle stand out. I like that idea there. Hey, Noel. Okay, got a dark brown. I wouldn't have a problem with dark brown. They go together. Oh, there you go. Spearhead, black with gray snake inlay. I do have some gray snake skin, and I had a gentleman reach out to me a couple weeks ago, or 10 days ago now, and I've got a wallet that I need to make. He saw my snakeskin belt. Last year I made a wallet for him, and now he's asking me to make him a snakeskin wallet. So where I'm going with that is I got to cut a chunk off of that snakeskin, and it makes it harder to use for anything else. So I could do an inlay with that. Hey Todd, I'm glad you're here. I like your new tractor there. I hope you're enjoying that. Nice inlay. I didn't think of that. Finland is lacking snakes. Well, here in the desert, I like to see the rattlesnakes, but if taking away the concern when you're out in the wilderness of getting bit by one, of not having any to begin with, I wouldn't have a problem with that. I do have something coming up. I tell you what, maybe I need to start recording these lives. I guess it wouldn't be a live then, because I end up giving up information. But I have some really cool exotic. To me, exotic means it came from somewhere other in the United States. But I have some really cool exotic leather coming, and it'll be here, I think Monday or Tuesday. And maybe I'll do a little bit of a tease of it. But it was some leather that I saw in Prescott, and the owner of the company with it suggested that maybe we could do a little bit of a collaborative video, and so they're sending it to me. So should I tell you what it is? I shouldn't tell you. No, yeah, I'll tell you. I give everything up. Snapping turtle. Has anybody out there seen snapping turtle leather? Let me know. Be interesting to see if anybody has. It's really, it looks a lot reminds me a lot of alligator. And no, it's not alligator snapping turtles because those are endangered. These are just your traditional snapping turtle from I'm going to say, the eastern half of the United States and the southeast United States. And when I was growing up, I can remember in the first grade, my brother and I, or second, it was right in there, I think it's first grade, we were down playing in the creek and we brought a turtle home, and it was a kind of a baby snapping turtle, and we ended up taking it into the school, and we had it in the school for the whole season. And we would, it was an old school, and the third floor was abandoned space, and we would go up and pick up dead flies off the windowsill, and that was the turtle's favorite snack. So, Todd, you've seen the snapping turtle leather? Is that what you're saying? And someone's reindeer hide, not seen snapping turtle. There you go, Spearhead Leatherworks. Yes, it's cool. It's like dragon skin. It's got, the tail looks like what you would think of a dragon. It's got jagged scales, I guess it probably is. It's like armor on its tail. And so I've got some of that coming. And according to that company, it's the only company that creates snapping turtle leather in the United States. Are you out to tell me my sound's working okay or not?
It's working.
Okay. HR department's coming out here. I didn't know if I was missing something there again. I appreciate everybody that found me here. This is my third live stream today. So anyway, the snapping turtle leather is really interesting, and I thought about using it on that knife sheath, and I'm not sure what colors are going to send me. They asked me what I wanted, and I didn't want to be greedy and pick maybe a color that I don't know, that maybe is harder for them to produce. And I'm just like, just send me something. I like colors. I like, different things. And they're sending me, I think, 5 hides. I think 4 of them are the tail part, which is really cool. And then one of them is shoulders. And then they're sending me one that I didn't even, you start looking at them. If you guys Google and look up snapping turtle leather, you'll come up probably with that company. But they have leather that is, they call it crust. And that's just a tanned leather that doesn't have any color on it. So I'm going to have some colors. They have lots of unique colors. They have multiple sizes. No, it's not inexpensive. You use basically, to make that sheath, I'll have to use one complete hide because you have the shoulder parts of it, but the tail section where all the cool detail at, it takes one of them to do that sheath. So anyway, we've talked enough about that. Let's see, if it's gray, then it's fake. Fate or fake. Anyway, I think that's good. But where I was going with the whole, like I said, I got this out and my brother's like, man, that leather's kind of dry. And I'm like, yeah, you'd think if I knew a leather guy, he could take care of that. And I got it out and I started to oil it. And I'm like, I think I want to talk a little bit about that, and so I thought that'd be kind of a good topic there. But I really do think that I'll bet you Todd outside again. I'll bet you I'll bet you that he's got or remembers an axe that his father had, or his father-in-law, or uncle, or grandpa, or somebody. And I've got hatchets hanging on the wall in Colorado, and I get them out and use them some. The thing is, you end up with a bunch of them, but I've got quite a few of them, and I use them occasionally. And I can remember, maybe being with Dad when he bought that particular one. I'm not sure if you guys know, I have an outdoor channel as well, and I do some like travel-related videos on there. And we were in Europe this last fall, and I was wearing a wool coat that I was with Dad when he bought it in Galleons in Plainfield, Indiana in, I don't know, 72, 73, something like that. And when he passed away, Mom asked me if I wanted it, and it fits me, and I wore it there. So I like wearing it, and then I'm thinking a lot of times when I'm wearing that or I'm using that hatchet, it's like, man, it'd be nice to have one more conversation. and talk about where we're at, because my father liked to travel. He would like to have been to go to the places that I took that coat. So anyway, not to get all mushy here. Let's see here. So many axes, lose track of where they came from. Yeah. Isn't that cool to have the tools that your father, and maybe you guys control the mushiness better than me. Thinking about those types of things, but especially as we get older, you're like, boy, I can remember that, and then you think, first you're like, oh, it's not that old. I had that when I was. Then you're like, pause, like, oh, well, that's 35. That's 40 years ago. This is like in 92. That's like 35 years ago, somewhere around there. Anyway, the years just keep clicking along, and yeah. So yeah, I've been kind of across the board with some different videos on that outdoor channel. I was in Florida, so I've got some videos there, and I'm going to be creating. I haven't coordinated with my brother, but I've got a brother right now that is hiking the Appalachian Trail. He's northbound, and if there's, let me know if anybody here has hiked it or even looked at hiking the Appalachian Trail. But he's, I'm going to say 3 weeks into hiking every day to hike. It's almost 2,200 miles if you've ever looked it up on the Appalachian Trail. And hey, do me a favor. If you didn't give me a thumbs up, would you give me a thumbs up? And I think everybody here is probably a subscriber, but a thumbs up would be good. I got 0 thumbs up there, and I got 25 people watching, so a little thumbs up would be great. I appreciate that. But anyway, I'm gonna try to do an interview with him, because if you could, he didn't even tell me he was doing that. He was into the hiking about 2 weeks, and then one day I open up and he's got a YouTube channel where he's doing that, and he's doing it as a fundraiser for it's called Tunnels to Towers. I don't know, maybe some of you guys know that organization, but they help families, first responders. I think a lot of times ones that maybe have lost a spouse or a father, in the line of duty, and it has to do with funding that. And the gentleman that it's all in honor of, he died 9/11. So it's amazing. I know there's a lot of people there, but I talk to people on somewhat of a regular basis that were like, I worked there, or my brother-in-law worked there. So as much as our world seems like a big world, I don't think it necessarily is. So I'm not going to throw it out there right now, but I'm going to do. One, I got to make sure I can make sure he's cool with it. But I'll do some type of a link and an intro there, and get you guys that information. But yeah, he's hiking the AP Trail, and if nothing else, if you if you don't want to donate to the cause, a prayer for him on the trail will be cool. Let's see here.
How many brothers do you have?
Yeah. There's 8 kids in the family, and 2 girls. So there's 6 boys and 2 girls. So I have 5 brothers, and we're I think we're all still walking Earth. I've got one we've lost track of a little bit there, so I'm not 100% sure how he's doing or where he's at. But and I'm on the younger end of the scale of brothers. So of all the kids, there's only 2 younger than me out of the 8.
Are you using the restored hammer?
The what?
Restored hammer?
Oh, so that hammer video that I did, I was creating it for myself, and as I got down towards the end of it, my brother that lives in Florida was talking about wanting to do some leather work stuff, and I thought, my favorite hammer is this one here. You guys have seen that one before. And when I finished, I put it in a box and I took it to him and gave it to him. So hopefully he's using it. But anyway, there you go. Maybe he'll actually think of me when he's using it.
How many wallet inlays do you think you'd get from a snapping turtle?
I've not worked with it yet, so, and I know you know that. But the hide on a snapping turtle, the tail is, it's not necessarily rigid, but it it doesn't have a whole lot of flex in it. But when you get into the neck and the shoulders on the front, on a big snapping turtles, and these are pretty good sized snapping turtles. I think the big one's like 42 inches from side to side, but it's got a lot of stretch. It's almost like it's balled up type of thing. So I've got to get where I'm going with that. I got to get it and see what it's like to work with. It's a chrome tan, so that tells you that having an edge burnish, that's gonna be a challenge. And I think I'm gonna be using it mainly as inlays on everything, because I don't like dealing with that chrome tan edge. And I've got an idea on creating some belts from it as well. But the larger height, if you were just making, say, a bifold wallet, I'm gonna think you could get at least a half a dozen out of that, maybe more than that. If you're just using it as like an accent. And I've seen where people only do, say, the face of it as an inlay there. And if you're doing that, you could get, I don't know, maybe you could get a dozen out of one. We'll try to figure that out. When I get those hides in, I'll do an opening video on it. I know that's boring for some people, but it's gonna be my first chance to have those. I looked at them for like 4 or 5 minutes in the booth and then walked on, without going any further. And then we had communication a couple weeks later on the possibility of doing that. So it'll be interesting to see how far we can go. There's more leather, I think, in the neck and shoulders, but it doesn't have the scales that you have on the tail. And Todd lives there near, he lives near our big rivers there by St. Louis, and he's probably used to seeing big turtles. And growing up down on some of the lakes, I've seen some that, that the shells, like this big side to side. The literature, I read a bunch of literature on snapping turtles before I, went any further with it. Partly because I want to make sure that, it's all done ethically and such. And it's a byproduct. There's a bigger population than I knew that like turtle soup, comes from snapping turtles. Some states have seasons on them so they can control how many are taken out of the population. Each female can lay up to like 35 eggs in each clutch once a year. So there's a lot of snapping turtles, put out there. I don't know who they're, besides us. I'm not sure what they have as far as animals that eat them. I'm not sure where they're at in the whole apex of eat or be eaten. So in a lot of states, there's not any regulations on it because they have so many of them. It's just a nuisance for a lot of people. And but holy smokes, they're huge. They're up to like 60, 70 pounds is what they collect on those. And I think really, other than the boot world, I think they're used a lot in boots. It's really a kind of a cool, they kind of use it in place of, say, alligator. And I've looked at buying some alligator hides, and talk about expensive. Some of those get really expensive. And I've never dug into that because I'm just not sure how feasible that is for me. Do I have the people that would pay for that? Because you're going to get into a lot of cost in the, just in the world there, just with the leather before you ever get to anything made from it. And mistakes there get more costly. I probably should stop there and let that soak in for a bit. But anyway, and it was interesting. My brother and I were down at the local park throwing the ball around, and some guy yelled over, "Is that a 2000 series, Wilson there?" And I'm like, "Oh, it's a 2120. He goes, "Oh yeah, I had the 2000 about the same time." So he rattled off how old he thought it was, and he was right there. So anyway, and just to go on the record, I played Little League and pretty much hated every moment of it there. It wasn't my thing. And maybe that's another reason why I tried to get better at throwing the ball around, as I go back to I probably didn't really apply myself like I should have. Oh, hey, John's on there. John, somebody was asking about if I'm using that hammer. Have you used the hammer yet? Yeah, Todd, I've seen some big snapping turtles. I've got the brother that's hiking the Appalachian Trail. He and one of my brother-in-laws We're fishing in Shakamak State Park. I don't know, see if anybody knows where that's at. Todd might. It's not all that far from where he's at, but Shakamak State Park in the middle of the night, and he hooked something and he's trying to drag it off the bottom. Thought maybe it was a big catfish, and when he got it up there, he had a snapping turtle there, and they say that its mouth was about that big around, and he's wrestling on that thing, and brother-in-law says, "What are you doing?" Well, trying to get it in the boat. And he said, if you get that thing in the boat, I'm going to be over there on the shore. I don't know how active they are when you get them out of the water, but I imagine they come after you there. All the church picnics in the summers have, there you go. Yeah, I didn't see that first there, Todd. Have turtle soup. I've never had turtle soup. We harvested a turtle one time, and Dad had, he was trying to figure out how to clean it, and I'm not sure if we ended up doing anything with it or not. He was struggling trying to figure out what to do with that turtle. So maybe I should give myself a thumbs up there too. So yeah, that was it. I just wanted to jump in here today, talk a little bit about that, and it was really that the sensory of seeing a knife or a baseball glove or work gloves, a hammer, that makes me kind of start thinking about my past and home and mom and dad. I'm sure that when you walk into a house and there's certain smells, and it takes you right back to grandma's house. I've got one other story I can think of here, and I'll see if anybody has any questions. But I can remember probably November sometime, rainy, and Dad put me off in one of our big cornfields and with a gunny sack, and he said, walk the field and pick up ears of corn, and when you get to the other end, ones that are dropped out of being harvested, dump them in a pile, do that on each end, and I'll come back in a few hours and we'll gather that up and we can take that back, and that'll be some feed for the livestock. And it was the field that was just south of Grandma's house there, and I'd made 2 or 3 trips up and down, and it was probably in the 40s, and it was misting out. It was highly unpleasant, and I was wearing my jersey gloves that were wet now. And she called me in, and she's like, "Have you had parched corn before?" So I'll see if anybody jumps in there and talks about had parched corn, but it's parched sweet corn. And I'm like, no, I hadn't. And so she fixed some up right there, and I can remember that. And if I ever see, it's not the same thing as corn nuts. It's not that at all. But when I see that, it kind of reminds me of then. And I think I've only had parched corn 1 or 2 other times since then. But the way you make that is you take sweet corn, you let it dry out, then you take those kernels off of the ear. And those kernels are really small. It's not like popcorn where it's like a kernel shape. They're all shriveled up. And you put them in a pan with some butter and salt. And when you cook them, they puff back up kind of to their normal shape. They don't open up like popcorn, and then you eat that. And so it's just kind of a crunchy snack, kind of like eating corn nuts. And so whenever I see that, or even the parched sweet corn, I think of Grandma and that particular day right there. I can still picture Dad driving off after he dropped me off in the field. It was that was before Grandpa passed away, and he passed away when he was 10. So I was 8 or 9. He dropped me off in the field there by Grandma's house. I don't know if he talked to them, like keep an eye on him, or if he just, I'll come back in a few hours. We lived about, I don't know, a mile and a half away or something like that. But, I think, I have a feeling that there's a lot more people that grew up. People say the kids grew up fast today. I think it depends on what you mean by growing up. John would say growing up is being responsible for yourself. But I think there was a lot of people that were responsible for themselves at much younger ages, back then than they are now. First time I can remember Dad putting me on a tractor in the field to run around with a disc and get the field ready for crops. I was like 8 or 9. on a tractor, and he wasn't there. He put me in there, made one lap with me there. We slowed it down. He says, after I step off, throttle it back up, go around until you get done. When you finish up, come by the house and just turn the switch off and wait for it to stop before you get off the tractor. And then he went over and got in his car and drove off. He worked second shift, and so he was gone most evenings growing up. And I'm not saying that it was a single parent family type thing, but I guess I had a little bit more of a feel of that than someone whose father was there each evening. And mom did a great job. But I was thinking about that the other day. Someone was talking about, well, you don't understand because single parent, and it was only one parent that ever went to any of the baseball games and that type of things. It was that way a lot, with two parents working third shift, and there's people out there, their fathers work third shift as well. Let's see here what we got. Sherry, you've not had parched corn. That's HR department. I'm gonna have to get some. I'll just get some sweet corn, and you just need to let it dry out all the way through till it's dry. Life very different now, children, compared to what I went through in the 70s. I think the whole lot more fun than these kids today have. Yeah, it's interesting. There's probably people on here. I know there is in my family, but I can remember getting Pong. Who got Pong? And played with that. That's the very first video game for home, right? I don't think there was one before Pong. And I don't want to say it's the beginning of the end, but it's the beginning of, I think, major changes, because, now there's a lot of kids that, if they've got any free time, they want to go play video games, disappear into the room, play video games. I'm not trying to get political or anything here, but I will say my brother Alan, he's the one here visiting with me, I get pictures all the time, and I think it's awesome. He's in the creek looking for snails and frog eggs, and getting wet and dirty and muddy. What a great experience, to have that, to be outside with nature. That's how I grew up, and I do feel at times that, not growing up on the farm, having my kids on the farm, I really feel like in some ways they really missed out on they missed out on what I grew up with and experienced, and apparently, some, on here as well. Yeah, Todd Pong, that was it. And, I think the more we can get out, and I'm not naive to the fact that even in the 60s and 70s, there were people on inner city that, they didn't have that experience of going out and getting lost in the woods and getting muddy and cold and wet and, having that whole experience. But even on the people that grew up in the city, most of them didn't hang out in the house all day and read books. They went outside, and I think, I guess I'm headed that direction, but I think they learn how to socialize with other people at a different level than we seem like we do today. Today I just don't see people socializing like that, and I think it shows in some of the issues we have with, trying to get along there. But I'll probably need to change topics here. I'll lose subscribers here on it. What do you use to sharpen knife? Are you planning on 20 DPS? I need an edge. What am I missing here? 20 DPS. I'm sorry, I'm not picking that up there. When I sharpen a knife, I have sharpening stones. And actually think of Dad when I'm using them, because he gave me several of the sharpening stones that I use. The problem with using a sharpening stone on some of my larger bench knives and things like that is most of them are either really coarse or they're the really hard Arkansas stone. And it's hard on the really hard Arkansas stone to sharpen, because that's really more of the burnish, and I don't have a whole lot of stuff in between. I use sandpaper for the majority of it. I'll set it on the stone, or I'll tape it down on the stone. And I do most of my sharpening dragging it. I just started putting an edge on this, and I did most of it by dragging it across what I'm working on. To me, I like that better than, I always grew up where you sharpen like this and then this. And so I tend to drag, and it works well on sandpaper because you can't really come this way unless you glue it to something, because you'll ball it up and cut it. But I use sandpaper on the majority of it, and on my bench tools, and I did the same with the kitchen knives. The kitchen knives I started off on a stone, but then I went to sandpaper and then burnish it. But that's what I use, and I'd love to have a set of the diamond sharpening stones. Well, they're more of sheets, because if you're sharpening something large like that, or a wide, say, planing blade or whatever it is, you need a pretty good sized stone. And I get in there and I start looking at those diamond stones. One of these days I'll probably, go ahead and spend the money, but you can easily spend $200 per grit, and you need 3 or 4 grits. I mean, you're at $800, and I can buy a lot of wet and dry sandpaper for $800, and I just like how it works. And it's interesting. I posted a video a couple months back on cost-effective ways to sharpen your knives or something like that. And there's a Facebook group that I like to put stuff on, and they just deleted it. And maybe I should ask why, but it's like, I think you did that because most people are like, you have to go out and you have to have this diamond grit sheet or whatever you want to call it. Is it called a sharpening stone when it's only 3/16 of an inch thick and 4 inches wide by 8 or 9 inches long? I guess I will call it a sharpening stone, but I don't want people to feel like that's what they have to do. So you can go over to Home Depot, buy $20 worth of sandpaper, and sharpen your knives for the next 2 years on that, and not worry about making a mistake with it. Sandpaper works well sharpening and refurbishing. I did a video on sharpening a bag punch, and I started off with 120 sandpaper and used that until I had all of the bevels set exactly where I want them. Then I worked up through it, and I don't need to go back to 120 again. I just take a piece of 400 or 600 and strop it on there a few times, then run it across a strop board. And it's not like the bag punch needs to be razor sharp, but it does cut nicer if it is sharp. That's for sure. Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. 1911. You don't need diamonds for most steel tools. I agree with that 100%. And I use my strop board here that I made. That's got a piece. It's got some leather on it, and I've used it quite a bit. You can see it's dark, and I just put the white jeweler's rouge in that. And you can take my swivel knife that I was using there, and it only takes a couple of trips across there, and it's back sharp again. And I think the main thing, and I know most people on here know, but if you're new into it, sharpen it when you don't think it needs sharpening, because that's the time to sharpen it. It's when it's dull and you're like, man, this thing needs sharpening. Now you've got a lot of work to get back there. So just a few strops on there. I watch Bruce Cheney. You guys have seen me say that before, but I've watched, and he'll cut the petals of one flower and then 3 strops, and then he goes to the next flower and 3 strops, and he just keeps it sharp and never has to worry about reshaping it, that type of thing. I really do think the majority of the time people are, when they're sharpening this, or they're pulling back and they maybe get here and they lift their hand just a little bit, and it doesn't take much to change what you're doing there. So I'm like, here, and pull back to yourself and just keep this hand in the exact same angle. And it's the same with this. Grab a hold of it here and pull it back and keep it in that same angle. And you see people with the barbershop strop, and the problem with those is they have flex to them, and you have a tendency to be changing the angle from one end to the other as it flexes. So if you've got that and you struggle with it, just lay it on the counter and strop it laying on the counter, so you take at least one of the challenges of sharpening, which is maintaining the same angle. You take that out of it, or it makes it easier to. Were you talking about how to make that stropping board? That's just a piece of plywood with some scrap leather. I think it's 8-9. It doesn't even have to be 8-9. And I just glued it on a contact adhesive and we'll strop on that. I know that I've seen where people talk about, and I haven't tried it, but it makes perfect sense. Why not? All you're trying to do is you need something to hold the jeweler's rouge to do that polish. There's no reason why you couldn't do that with a piece of like cardstock. You could use paper if you could get it to stay in there, but it needs to have a little bit of a texture to it to hold it. But you could use that. And then like the sandpaper that I've got, the 400, I've got some I've used so much, it's just slick. Well, that almost becomes a strop as well. You've knocked off a lot of that aggregate. Because when you look at sandpaper under magnification, it's all these jagged peaks. And when you're using it, those peaks are tougher than what you're sanding, so it takes off of there. And after it gets knocked down, then that's when you switch out. And the other thing I would say is, you have to keep things in perspective. When you're sanding something, don't be afraid to throw the sandpaper out after you've used it for a little bit, because it becomes ineffective and you spend a lot more time trying to do the same thing with it. When I was working on here, I would use it a little bit, and when you can tell when it's not cutting as well, and it's time to, go on to the next one. I've got fingerprints on there from that leather conditioner. Oh, what is 8-9? Sorry, 8 to 9 ounce thick veg tan leather. That's what I was talking about on 8-9. Yeah, I've got a little thickness gauge that I bought. I bought it through Buckle Guy. That's it here. And it's really pretty handy. I used thickness gauges, little plastic up here with the little notches in it on there that I bought from Springfield. They're like $4 a piece or something. And I bought this from Buckle Guy, and it was kind of expensive. And then later I found the exact same one without, a logo name on it, and it was considerably less. It was the exact same model. So if you're interested in one, I can't remember. I think I paid $50 for this thing. I use it all the time, and I do like it better. It's easier than the edge thing, because sometimes when you have leather that's been cut, the edge can feel a little thicker because when you're cutting it, maybe it swells the leather up. This gets you in, an inch from the side so that you can measure it. They make large ones that are a lot more expensive, but this is one of the handiest things on the workbench, because you're feeling it and you're trying to tell by feeling it. And most people, unless they do a lot of leather work, can't pick it up and handle it and tell you what the weight of it is. Well, I'm not sure even how long we've been on here. Probably been on here an hour. I guess that depends on if you're talking about the first live stream, the second live stream, or the third live stream. I'll probably just go back and delete those other two and just leave this one here as the live stream. And I love that. Let's see. What'd you say up here, Todd? I just subbed again. Ha. Yeah, I don't understand why sometimes you become unsubscribed. So, but yeah, hey, if you would, check and make sure you're subscribed. I'm right at coming up on 5,100. I've been there for like 4 days. So if you're not there, maybe you can help push me over 5,100 if you look and you're not subscribed. But I think I'm gonna go ahead and wrap up there. I'm rambling on here. If you got any questions there, I'll give it another 30 seconds here, see if anybody's got any questions. But yeah, I don't want to go too long here. If you want diamonds for tools, gunny juice diamond emulsion on a strop. That must be like a rouge that you can go on a strop with, which that makes sense as well. Something like that. I'm not sure what the aggregate is in the stropping compound. That noise is my son's motorcycle. He just arrived here drove from Denver on his motorcycle. So you have to have a lot of interest in sitting and still for a length of time there. But so that's probably a good time to wrap up there. Curious about black cherry. Are you talking about the color I call black cherry? Because if you're talking about the color I call black cherry, I create that by using that Vacada leather that's red, and then I do not put a resist on it. I go straight on it with black antiquing, and that takes that color to a deeper red. The red, hang on a second here. This is that red. This is going to be one of these covers here. I don't have a problem with the red. It's a little bright for some things, and I don't remember what it was I was working on, but I tested with the antiquing straight on there. If you get any scratches on there, you're going to see that. So if you think you have something that you need to be careful of, you will probably want to use a resist, but I use it straight on there. And then before I forget, let me say, this next weekend, I've got my first show here in Phoenix, and it's here in Mesa, in Las Sendas, at one of the parks. So if you're in the area, I'll put something on the community page when we get a little bit closer where that's at. If you're in the area, come by and say hi. And if you remind me, I've got a few bags I've made up there of some coasters. And we can take it around the corner, guys. So anyway, if you come up to me and ask for one, I've got some bags to give away there. So I guess maybe that's a good sign to get off here. Let me look one more time and see if there's any notes here. Hey, Noel, I'll look at your view today. I see here you say you got the sticker on the board. I know that means you must have shown that in your video, so I'll go look at that as well. And yep, I've got that zipper pouch or Zippo pouch on my list there. That's one of the projects I got to get done here in the next week or 10 days. Let's see. What do you use to get a sheen or shine on your leather when you're done dyeing? So I've used, I use a lot of Reslene as opposed to tan coat. And I know that the Pro Resist is also a good way to go as well. And I had someone that say, I don't understand why you don't use the products that Phoebes tells you to use, which is Pro Resist for resist. And I'm using tan coat because that's what Ian from Phoebes told me to use. And maybe it's because he knew I had some. But I use tan coat if I'm not worried about color rub off. The tan coat is a lower sheen than Reslene. I use Reslene the most because I'm worried about color rub off. I make a lot of belts, and when I make the belts, I'm really worried about someone having a white shirt and a black belt and getting color rub off onto the shirt. So I use the Reslene, and I've not had any comments about that. When I first started, I wasn't using the Pro. I was using the regular Phoebes dye, and it's worse about color rub off. So I made two changes at the same time. I stopped using that and the tan coat on the belts, and I went to Reslene. Some people complain about the sheen. I don't think it's a relevant conversation for the majority of the consumers buying it. And after you've used it for a while, some of that sheen wears off of there as well. Yeah, I'm excited to do that. And on the Silver Stacks is asking about the, I'm going to make a Zippo holster for that. And I was going to get a piece of wood and get it shaped to that. And you made me start thinking once again about Dad. Dad had a Zippo that he carried all the time I knew him, and he had worn the nickel finish off all the way down to the brass. I don't know if it's a brass coating or if they're made from brass. My feelings are probably made from brass and nickel coated. So I'm gonna buy myself a Zippo. No, I don't smoke. I have no need for a Zippo, but I'm gonna buy myself a Zippo, and I'll use that to make that when I get that. So I'm gonna go ahead and wrap up there. I've got a little QRM over here, and that's one way to get rid of that. We'll see if anybody knows what QRM is. So that's about it. I really do appreciate you taking time to be with me today. I apologize on the front side there. I don't know what happened there. I set the camera up, set the orientation for it. I know how to do that now. And then when it came up, it's like orientation's the wrong way there, and I was trying to get that straightened up. So anyway, I appreciate it. I hope you have a great day. Thanks.